About 30 seconds. About 30 seconds. Not 6 yet. We'd like to call the City of Pearland Zoning Board of Adjustments meeting to order for January 2023, our first meeting. We call to order at 6 p.m. We do have a quorum of 5 people. However, on the first item, under new business, Jerry will be recusing himself of that particular item, so we'll be voting just as for that particular item. We would like to move into our new business, and we would like to see a consideration and possible action for extension request for ZBA application number VARZ 22-17, a request of Palan LLC represented by Rohit Bhuriya, excuse me if I did not pronounce that correctly, owner, for approval of extension of an already approved variance as permitted by the Unified Development Code Ordinance number 2000-T to allow for a reduction in the required parking for a general retail store use in the General Commercial District, Section 4.2.1.2, and the general location is 3520 East Walnut Street, Pearland, Texas. Do we have a staff report?
Yes. So this is a request for extension of a previously approved parking reduction. The board heard this at their October 6th meeting. Typically, variances expire within 90 days of the date of approval. As the board heard this case on October 6th.
They're pausing because I think there might be some confusion. Mr. Acosta, were you recusing yourself because you have a conflict of interest on this one?
Yes.
Okay. If that's the case, we will get you an affidavit that you need to fill out, but the City Council's rules of procedure adopted require that you step out of the room for something that you have a conflict of interest and you recuse yourself versus you just recuse yourself for some other reason.
Okay.
So that's what the confusion was. That's why we stopped. And if you'd be so kind, we'll give you a minute to step out of the room, and then we will follow up tomorrow, making sure you've got the affidavit you need to fill out.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We just want to make sure everybody,
Thank you.
nobody later accuses Mr. Acosta of influencing the board of anything if it's a true conflict of interest that required him to step out.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. So, as stated, the board heard and approved this case at their October 6th, 2022 meeting. And the applicant is working with their design team to submit their building permits. They just had some delays with members of their team being off for the various holidays. The applicant expects to submit their building permit sometime in January, but is concerned with the variance expiring and their ability to submit those plans. Given that the board may extend the time for filing the building permit application with a good cause, but in any event, the expiration date of the variance shall not extend beyond the 1 year from the date of the variance being granted. And with that, staff believes that the applicant has shown good cause and demonstrated their intent to pursue submittal of the building permit. And with that, staff recommends approval of the extension of the expiration date for the variance to October 6th, 2023.
Thank you. Do we have a applicant presentation? Yes, sir. Would you please go to the podium and state your name and address for us, please?
Good evening, everybody, and Happy New Year to all of you. I'm back here today. My name is Mr. Rohit Bhuriya, and I'm the member president for Palan LLC, 16055 Space Center Boulevard, Suite 190, Houston, Texas, 77062. Thank you for your time in initially approving this variance request and again today to review this. This variance was approved on October 6th when I was here. I came in person for the presentation, and we got an email on October 10th that it's good for 90 days unless you file the extension. We had until we got our variance approved, we really did not know what we are going to come up on the site exactly at that time. And we started having proposals and everything from the architect as well as the civil engineering and the geotech companies. And once we got all those proposals, we got started working on it. But because of intermittently those holidays coming in and various people taking times off at different times during those holidays, it was impossible to get it on time within those 90 days. And therefore, we sincerely request that this, variance from when it was initially approved. And with that, I conclude my presentation, what I have to say, and I'm open for any questions if you all have.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any persons wishing to speak for or against? We'd like to move into staff and applicant discussion. Any questions from the staff? From the board, the staff? No. We'd like to move into consideration and possible action. Can we put here it is. Don, would you read the?
Yes. Make a motion to approve the extension request for variance application 22-17 to October 6, 2023.
It's been motioned. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been motioned and second. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. Motion carries 4-0 in favor. We'd like to move into our
Thank you.
Yes, we'd like to move into our second new business. This is a consideration and possible action for VA. Could we call Mr. Jerry back in, please? For our second order of a new business is consideration and possible action for VARZ 22-22. This is a variance to reduce parking requirement for a general retail store. This is a request by Hankins Development, represented by Garrett Carter, applicant, on behalf of Anthony Giuliani, owner, to allow a variance as permitted by the Unified Development Code, Ordinance number 2000-T, for a reduction in the required parking for a general retail store use in the neighborhood service district, section 4.2.1.2. This is a general location of 3205 Dixie Farm Road, Pearland, Texas. Staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Let me introduce Patrick Bauer to present the staff report. Patrick, take it away.
Thank you, Martin. Good evening, Good evening, Board. And my name is Patrick Bauer, and the request before you tonight is for a variance to reduce the required parking for a general retail store use, and it's to reduce the required parking from 50 spaces to 46 spaces for a 10,000 square foot building. Don't know if that's me. Can you hear me? Okay, let's see if this works a little better. Just to mention again, just because it was kind of micy, it's to reduce the required parking for general retail store use from 50 spaces to 46 spaces for a 10,000 square foot building. And to date, staff sent notice within the local newspaper, as well as the applicant posting a sign on the property, and all property owners within 200 feet received notice of the request, and staff has not received any written comments or phone calls in favor or against the request. So looking at the zoning of the property, as mentioned, its neighborhood service is the zoning of the actual subject property. And then to the kind of northwest and northeast is general commercial. And then to the southwest generally is the single family residential 1 zoning. And then to the east kind of portion is the single family residential 4 zoning district. And looking at the future land use designation of the property, it's the retail offices and services designation. And that's also surrounded by that same future land use on 3 sides, with the southeast being the medium density residential future land use. So kind of just a little history on this property as a whole. There was an existing home that was developed in 1963 on the property. Then in 2017, a zone change request from single family residential 1 to general business went before city council. Council voted to adopt a lesser zoning of neighborhood service. Then in 2020, city council approved a conditional use permit for assisted living, but the CUP or conditional use permit has since expired. And then most recently in December 2022, city council denied a zone change request from neighborhood service to general business for the property. And so looking at the aerial map, the yellow shows the subject property as a whole as it sits today. But then the actual development that's before you tonight is looking generally at the red outlined portion in the kind of western, northwestern portion of the property. And so the surrounding uses, we see the Walmart and the Home Depot kind of to the north of the property. And then we see single family residences to the southwest and southeast of the property. And so this is just an image of the subject property, specifically the portion that's proposed to be developed upon in the image. And to the left, you can see that's the existing home. The left portion of the image is the existing home on the property. And then the right portion where you see kind of all the trees, there's another, that's where the adjacent single family home that's on the next slot over to the southwest is. And so here's the proposed site plan for the property. We kind of get a general look of where the parking is on the property as well as the building. And the parking is predominantly in the northern portion. Dixie Farm is on your top right. That's where Dixie Farm is. And you can see that there's the median cut that extends over into Walmart. And then the building is kind of more on the southern portion of the property. And as mentioned, it's proposed as 46 spaces, but the required is 50. And an additional note is one of the hardships stated by the applicant is the location of the median cut. Where the location of the median cut is, that's where they've decided to put their driveway. And since they've decided to put their driveway more south on the property, they're saying that there isn't as much available land south of the property, so you kind of got to squeeze that portion down a little bit so it kind of reduces the amount of available space to the south of that driveway, which will continue throughout the property and potentially have other developments in the property, but the location of the driveway is based on the median cut according to the applicant. And here we just get the proposed site plan from an aerial view, kind of getting a look of how it relates to the adjacent single-family property as well as the median cut along Dixie Farm. And kind of just getting another comparison of the parking calculations. Since this is a 10,000 square foot building, it is less than 25,000, which general retail store has 2 different, whether you're under 25 or over. And if you're under 25,000 square feet, you're required to do 1 space per 200 square feet, which based on the 10,000 comes out to 50 spaces required. And then looking at the request by the applicant, we see that they're proposing 46 spaces and the ratio would come out to be 1 space per 217 square feet of building. And so looking at the approval criteria for variances, staff found that the request only met 1 of the 8 approval criteria for granting a variance. And so the request does not meet 7 of the 8 criteria for granting variances. And staff specifically found that the hardships stated by the applicant do not constitute a physical hardship of the actual subject property, as they are not actual physical features of the land, such as if it's in the floodway or floodplain or has certain elevations. And additionally, a retail use that meets the required parking can still be developed on the subject property, either by reducing the size of the building, which would reduce your parking requirement, or by potentially acquiring more land, which could make it so that they could provide the extra 4 spaces, which is the reduction. Staff is therefore unable to recommend approval of the requested variance based on the approval criteria. And that concludes staff's report.
Thank you. We'd like to move into, is there an applicant presentation? Yes, sir. Would you go to the podium and state your name and address for us?
Good evening. My name is Michael Hankins with Hankins Development. I think we had Garrett Carter on there. He was unable to make it today. I appreciate first the staff's thoroughness on their report, and I appreciate you guys taking a look at this for us. Really, what I'd just like to add to the report is that we do have these buffers, the buffer on the south side of the property with the residential abutting use that is also kind of, I guess, shrinking the size of the area on the south side of the driveway. While the driveway, doesn't absolutely have to be there, it is at a median cut, and for, I guess, what I would say a typical retail plan development, that's where it's going to want to be, and it's directly across from the Walmart driveway, which makes it really the safest place for that to be. There's also an oak tree just north of that driveway that also limits the options there. So our request, this is for a Dollar Tree store. Dollar Tree operates about 14,000 stores throughout the country. They're quite in tune with their parking requirements, and they only require us to provide 30 parking spaces. And so I think that's just worth noting that the tenant truly only needs about 30 parking spaces. We're more than 50% above that, and yet we fall about four parking spots short of the requirement. So those are the main, the gist of our request, and I'm here for questions, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. We have any persons wishing to speak for or against? Would you please, first of all, state your name and address for us, but would you also, there's a yellow card once you finish. There's a yellow card outside. Would you fill that out and bring that to Ms. Shelby right here once you finish? Ma'am, you have 3 minutes to say what you would like to say.
Hello, my name is Angela Ornelas. I live at 3522 Pine Chase Drive. That is one of the residents that's directly behind the proposed development. I was one of the people who received the letter. Again, there's only 10 houses that are allowed to receive the letter, so a lot of people don't know about the incoming messages of the recommendations that are being nominated today. I want to go on state and ask that you deny this, because it did come to City Council last month in regards to the matters of what was going to be built on this land. It was proposed a memory care as well as a neighborhood store. Our concerns and what was recommended and denied by the City Council was that the proposed developers should reach out to those people who live there to kind of come to a medium of what should be built there. This is all new news. Now that we're going to know it's a general dollar store, when you have a Walmart right across, is pretty ridiculous, first off. But then the second part is that they want to split this land into 2 parts of building an 11,000 square foot memory care unit, as well as a proposed Dollar Tree now. I work for Texas Children's. I work from home. I'm a coder, and I'm home 24/7, so I'm there all day, can hear what's going on. I don't even think they're considering if they're going to build a memory care, which is not a good idea due to the fact that would be closer to the homes, and there's there's a possibility of they don't even know what they're going to be building yet as far as the true format for the whole lot. So if they're going to need to have EMS come to the memory care or the fire department for emergency care situations, you're not even taking into consideration the whole full matter. I don't think anything can be approved until the full lot of the 10 acres is platted out exactly what's going to be built and where. And it should be provided to everyone ahead of time, because even in the presentation for staff, it said that there was no calls, there were no communication from people who live there. There are a lot of concerned neighbors. Unfortunately, I'm the one who's been nominated as the representative for the neighborhood. And what we wanted to suggest, if they wanted to build something, they should build exactly what's in front of Pine Hollow, which are buildings that are worked Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, to where there's not going to be deliveries, that we don't have to be concerned of people breaking in from whatever area, because again, Dollar Tree or any other type of restaurant or other business that's going to be placed there.
Would you make your final statement, ma'am?
I was asking if this could be denied because, to be honest, they don't know what's going to be platted out. So I think the determination of parking lots should not be determined until the plat is made. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And would you please fill out the yellow form, and it's just we won't forget. Any other persons wishing to speak for or against? We'd like to move into staff and applicant and commission discussion. Any questions from the board?
I have a quick question for staff, if I could. I noticed we referenced the fact that council had denied the change in zoning from neighborhood service to general business. And I'm not familiar with the parking requirements, if there are differences in the parking space requirements between GB and NS as far as classification. Are there any?
So the zoning district would not change the calculation for the number of parking spaces required. It's based off the use of the building, and the use of the building we're considering to be general retail.
Okay. My thinking was that if council, for whatever reason, and I wasn't there for the vote or any discussion council had, if council was in the back of their minds somehow or another thinking if we changed the zone as requested, it will somehow impact the number of parking spaces required there. And obviously, as you said, it doesn't apply in this case.
And I would say that part of the discussion was about the platting of the property, both on staff side of the discussion and from the neighbors. One of the requirements from the in order for a variance to be heard is that the property has to be platted unless the boundaries of the property will be affected by the platting, or will be affected by the granting of the variance. So, this is still one lot and still could be expanded or shrunk because it has not been platted yet. So keep that in mind as you are considering the hard boundaries of this lot are not set in stone yet, so to speak. They're not set and recorded by the city.
Just for confirmation, the proposed land use is allowed by neighborhood services.
Correct. And the use is not what is being discussed or should be a part of your consideration. The consideration should just be that it is a general retail use, and the general retail requires one space per 200 square foot, and that the request is for a reduction in that parking.
Any other questions? Any other questions?
And I'm sorry I forgot your name, sir. The young man who presented the that spoke on behalf of the variance request.
Yes, sir. Michael Hankins.
Michael, thank you, Mr. Hankins. When we meet as a board, of course, as you saw in the presentation by the city, we're given a really detailed explanation of the criteria where we can approve or consider to approve or disapprove a variance request. And I wondered, have you gone through all 8 of those, or 7 in this case, of those reasons that city staff says this does not meet the criteria for?
Yes, sir.
How would you react to those 7 in the city's decision or analysis that this does not meet the criteria for approval?
I guess what I would say is that, every city has criteria they use. We're making our requests based off of what our general needs are and what works for this particular development. We received this, I don't know, probably a week or more ago, but of course after we had applied for the variance. So we still wanted to come today and see if we could discuss, how we could possibly get this variance done, because what we don't want to do is, or what I don't feel like anybody wants to do, is build too much parking. What we're all trying to do is build an adequate amount of parking. And where that falls, I think is open to interpretation, and that's the discussion. But I think you all would agree that we're trying to get the adequate amount of parking. And so, I don't know exactly what the rules are with respect to, what determination the board can make based off of these 8 parameters, if one's enough, or if it's not enough, or if there's any decision at all to be made. But we're just here trying to get to a point where we have the appropriate amount of parking that doesn't overburden, the area with additional concrete that's unnecessary, and create a situation that's building too much parking essentially.
Just another confirmation from staff. In order for the 46 spaces to meet the parking requirement, the building would need to be reduced from the 10,000 square feet to 9,200.
Yes. That'd make 46, but because 800 divided by 200 is 4. So yes, it would have to be 9,200.
All right, thank you.
Just to comment on that, I wonder, when y'all are looking at that proposed site plan, have you gamed out the possibility of any other way to where those 4 parking spaces would fit in the existing proposed site plan? I don't know whether you have or not, but if you have you talked with the applicant about that?
I played with it a little bit. I think though in the end, given that you need drive aisles have certain widths and stuff, it would probably have to come more at the I guess would be the bottom of the property, but the back of the property, but you would have to acquire a little more land likely. Just given the way the driveway is, you really can't add any more like parking off of there unless you kind of expand it a little bit more, because there is an area, there's the aisle of driveway that is along the driveway. You see those spaces that are kind of like parallel to it. Even if there's those like dashed areas, those are meant for like actually as like for like meeting turning radius. So even if you thought like, hey, I can put them maybe in there, there's certain turning radiuses that need to be met by that. Or one of the areas is like it's a loading dock area, so that's an area that they need for the business. So really, the one way would be to add 4 more spaces would probably be unless you totally reorient the building, because it's hard to go through every single circumstance, but putting it more at the back of the property, but they would likely have to acquire some more land for that.
Apologies, if I could clarify, when you say acquire more land, there's 112 square feet of land. I'm sorry, there's 112 acres of land available. This is just a portion of that lot?
1.12. Yeah, there's a point there. It's just very small.
Yeah, the overall lot is...
What I need to do if I'm going to read something like that,
Yeah.
with my glasses, I do apologize. But this is part of a
Yes.
larger lot that has not yet been subdivided.
Yes, it's 1.12 acres of the 9.6135 acre total lot.
So you could find 4 parking spots, room for 4 parking spots in a much, which is what led to staff's criterion being read, especially when you look at the last one on the staff assessment of the criterion. How do we know what's the appropriate one for this? The rest of the lot's not built out, which I think is what members of the public have spoken about as well. Ultimately, I think the issue is the applicant thinks that the parking ratio is too onerous for the proposed use, because he doesn't want, and I apologize, I don't want to take the words out of your mouth, but I think what I heard you say was you don't want to see of parking. You want to find the appropriate balance between the square footage and the parking lot.
Well, yeah. I mean, for us, we need 30 parking spaces. We're trying to get to the 50 in a kind of reasonable way that tends to flow. I mean, yes, as the gentleman pointed out, we could buy an extra 40 feet on the back and put 4 parking spaces back behind the building. But I guess my question would be, what have we really accomplished there? So that certainly is the alternative. It can be possibly accomplished. I mean, of course, that comes, at that point we'd have to look at the financials of that, and with these things as always. And I understand that's not a consideration for you guys, nor should it be. But I guess what I would say is, if we put 4 parking spots behind the building that nobody ever uses, if that's the will of the board here, then I understand. We'll accept it. But that's what we're, asking to not have to do.
Yes, sir.
I know this is not our concern, but I'm just sitting here looking at this and thinking this is going to be an entrance into this developed piece of property, and we're going to have a loading dock with a vehicle that's possibly impeding the traffic flow into the memory care facility, other retail facility, whatever the case might be. So, and I think it would be better for them to acquire more land and put the loading dock in the back, and you're out of traffic flow, and you get your 4 more spaces right on the side. But that's just me. I know that's not we're not here to design their building, but I see the layout may personally being a problem. But that's just my personal opinion. So I just wanted to express that. Did I make myself clear? You're good.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and I understand that. Unfortunately, with our tenant and their national program, they have prototypes, and having the loading in the rear is not something that they do. And with the amount of stores that they have, it's trying to get everything the same type of situation. But And we're not, to be clear, we're not developing the remainder of the property, and we're working with the owner of the property to develop an access that works, and we're talking about, and yes, that is a concern of ours a little bit, is the loading. Of course, the driveway can be expanded and worked around in future developments, and they'll do what's right for them on the rest of that property. This is just considered to be a phase 1 of this.
Just a clarification, if I could, with staff. We're on I guess that would be the southwest edge of the property. Yeah. We're not worried about any kind of a landscaping requirement or bushes or trees that's got adding extra footage there, are we?
So there is a requirement for there to be a landscape buffer against this southern property line, the property line that's shown to be 330 foot deep. That is because there is an existing residential use on that adjacent property that's causing the buffer to be a requirement. Now, the buffer can be reduced through the UDC to be a 25-foot buffer. This site plan, I believe, shows a 30-foot buffer. So there is a possibility for them to pick up 5 additional feet. And it does appear that there is kind of a jink in the access easement here. So there may be some possibilities to pick up an extra few feet and put in some additional parking spaces. Again, I'm not the designer of the site, just reading off of the measurements and knowing the availabilities within the existing UDC.
Well, that was the purpose of my question. I'm thinking maybe we could find some extra area there within the existing design plan or site plan. Thank you, staff.
Any other questions? We'd like to move into consideration and possible action. Would you place the motion? Would you read the motion?
I make a motion to approve variance VARZ 22-22 as presented.
It's been motioned. Is there a second? Second. It's been motioned and second. Any discussion? Okay, no discussion. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. Motion is denied. Denied 4-1.
Thank you.
This concludes the Zoning Board of Adjustments meeting for January 2023.
Hello, welcome to the Dolores Fennick Nature Center. I'm Katie. And I'm August. And just behind us, you can see the Dolores Fennick Nature Center. We are Pearland's nature education facility. So inside our awesome facility, we have several native animals, including alligators, turtles, and freshwater fish. We also offer a